This morning's reading is from Matthew chapter 9, verses 9 to 26. As Jesus was walking along, he saw a man called Matthew sitting at the tax collection station, and he said to him, "Follow me." And he got up and followed him. And as he sat at dinner in the house, many tax collectors and sinners came and were sitting with Jesus and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" But when he heard this, he said, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners." Then the disciples of John came to him, saying, "Why do we and the Pharisees fast often, but your disciples do not fast?" And Jesus said to them, "The wedding attendants cannot mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them, can they? The days will come when the bridegroom is taken away from them, and then they will fast. No one sews a piece of unshrunk cloth on an old cloak, for the patch pulls away from the cloak, and a worse tear is made. Neither is new wine put into old wineskins. Otherwise the skins burst, and the wine is spilled, and the skins are ruined. But new wine is put into new wineskins, and so both are preserved." While he was saying these things to them, suddenly a leader came in and knelt before him, saying, "My daughter has just died, but come and lay your hand on her, and she will live." And Jesus got up and followed him with his disciples. Then suddenly a woman who had been suffering from a flow of blood for 12 years came up behind him and touched the fringe of his cloak. For she was saying to herself, "If I only touch his cloak, I will be made well." Jesus turned, and seeing her, he said, "Take heart, daughter, your faith has made you well." And the woman was made well from that moment. When Jesus came to the leader's house and saw the flute players and the crowd making a commotion, he said, "Go away, for the girl is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him. But when the crowd had been put outside, he went in and took her by the hand, and the girl got up. And the report of this spread through all of the district. Lord, may we have eyes to see and ears to hear and hearts that seek to follow.
Thanks, Brian. And thank you, Kim, for leading this morning. It gives me the space I'm leading music and leading the homily, so it gives me a little bit of brain space in between those things. It's good, and lets me to. It's not rare that I get to worship myself in these kind of settings. That's nice. Thank you. All right. So this morning I'm going to preach about wine. All right, and I know there's a number of you sitting here finally a homily that I'll be able to stay awake all the way through. He's going to talk about wine. Good stuff. About time. Let's get into it. All right. Just to be very clear, I'm not talking about wine making. I'm not taking you on a wine tour. There's going to be no wine tasting. What we are going to be talking about is the storage, but mostly about the transport of wine. All right? That's what we're going to be talking about. So I've got a little set of PowerPoints that Kyle's going to put up for me, just to lead us on this little bit of a journey through the homily. So that is how wine is stored. All right, you put it in a barrel, and look, there's a whole range of things about the stuff about the timber you use, how old your barrels are. I don't get any of that. I'm not a wine drinker. But so I apologise. I know I'm heathen in that regard. I don't drink wine, and I also want to throw this in as well right now. At no way do I want to romanticise the consumption of alcohol, because I know there'll be people who have an issue with it, and I don't want to make too much light If that's a struggle for you, so be it. That's okay. Like, I don't drink. Never. It's not. I have other issues. And I'm not going to share those today. All right. But so anyway, that's how wine's stored, and it's been like that in the ancient of days. And this is how you store wine today, in a barrel. That's how wine is stored. The issue, of course, becomes how do you carry wine? If you want it for personal consumption, rather than, none of us, I don't think any of us have a barrel of wine in our household, do we? All right? Maybe you do, I don't know. No judgment, just saying. So look, I want to show you, there's a couple of ways that we know in the modern world how you transport wine. And Kyle, the next slide. The wine bottle, all right? There you go, the wine bottle. Here's one that was prepared for me earlier. It's empty, all right? I won't name by who, and I don't know in how long it was consumed, but there's an empty wine bottle, all right? And we know what they are. We know what they look like. Most of us go to the shop and buy it like that, in a bottle, all right? There are other ways that wine is transported or consumed. This is the old, this one? You know what that's a photo of? It's the old wine, the cooler bar. I don't know if it's cooler bar. In my day, everyone was drinking a cooler bar. The cooler bar flask, cask. Sorry. You know what that's called? You know what the colloquial Aussie name for that is? Pardon, sorry? No, I got two what? The Chateau cardboard. Yes, all right. Yes. The goonie. That's right. The goon bag. That's right. Or the poor drinker's handbag. What was that, Gary? The Dapto briefcase. Sorry to anyone who's joining us from Dapto, all right? Gary, that's gold. But no, I'm sorry, that's... anyway, yeah, so there's the cask, and most of us are familiar with the cask, wine casks. All right, the other one is I just had a quick photo, a wine flask. Wine comes that way too. Now, in ancient of days, in Jesus' time, this is how wine was transported. Attractive, isn't it? All right? So that's a wineskin. So when Jesus is talking about a wineskin, it looks something like that. And what a wineskin was, it was the hide or the bladder, woohoo, of a sheep or a goat, usually. And it was treated, and that's how they transported it, all right? That was your portable, durable, that was Jesus' 0th century goon bag, all right? That's what that was. Which means that when Jesus was reaching for a metaphor, he picked this one. This is the one and it's in all three of the synoptic gospels. It's in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. So he must have talked about this idea of wine and wineskins. It's a tangible, practical example for his time. It's visible, it's known, it has an application. And it's quite simple. He says very simply, you don't put new wine in old wineskins. When you're going to your barrel of wine, and if it's new wine, if it's newly pressed, if it's new wine, you put it into a new wineskin. There's something about the bacterial interaction and the breakdown, the chemical reactions of the skin that mean that the skin, that kind of a skin, as it gets older, if you put new wine in, what will happen is that your skin, while you're on the way to somewhere, will start to leak. Or it might even split. And you'll lose your wine. So, new wine goes into new wineskins. And old wine goes into old wineskins. Aged wine. Now, let me be very clear that Matthew and Luke in particular are a little bit different. And you can go and read the Luke version of this because Luke gets himself into a little bit of like he put in Jesus' words, he has Jesus kind of making a difference between the quality of old wine and aged wine and new wine. And that's not what Matthew's doing here. Matthew has put this this metaphor in a particular part of his gospel in a particular way because he wants to make a particular message. And it's not about what's better, old or new. He's saying what goes together. An old, aged wine needs to be in an aged wineskin. You can't put new wine into an old wineskin. So this isn't an argument about what's better. So let's just go to the next slide, because this is kind of the metaphor, and this is what I want to spend my time talking about. Old wine, new wine. Old wineskins, new wineskins. Because they're kind of like the different... That's what comes up in today's passage of Scripture. Now, to be clear, with this little line, and I picked out... I've gone for this line this week because this is the line that stood out to me. There were so many different parts of that gospel reading that I could have preached on, and I have preached on it other times. But this is the message that hit me this week. This idea of new wine and new wineskins, old wineskins. There's no further explanation. All we get is Jesus saying, you don't put new wine in old wineskins. That's all we get. There's no explanation. There's no teaching that goes with it. He just drops it in and then keeps moving. And then in the book of Matthew, it just keeps moving on to the next little paraclete, next little story. Now, I do want to say that I think there is a key clue to understanding what Jesus is trying to say, as Matthew has it. And so I'll get you to put the next slide up for me, Kyle. And it's this line here. This was verse 13 of what we read this morning. Go and learn this. He's talking to the crowds at this point in time. He's talking to his disciples. Go and learn this. He has been ridiculed for spending his time with the unrighteous and the sinners and the tax collectors and all the people who are out he was at the pub or wherever he was, at someone's home, probably at Matthew's home actually, sorry, he was at Matthew's home. Matthew was a tax collector. Tax collectors were hated. That's where he was. And in his defence, and in defence of the people he is with, this is the line that comes up. Go away and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. That's the clue, I think, to all of this we've read this morning. Everything that we've read this morning comes back to this line, this sentence. Go away and learn what it means. If you're going to start judging people, or even if you're not, if you're looking for a different way of being in life, if you're looking for life to make sense, learn this. Learn the difference between mercy and sacrifice. As a person of faith, learn the difference between mercy and sacrifice. This line comes from Hosea, the prophet Hosea. It's about 600 years. So when Jesus is looking for a way to explain things, he doesn't go, I've got this whole new thing. What he's trying to say is this is the nature of God. This has always been the nature of God, and that's what I'm trying to lead you back into. That God desires from our hearts mercy, not sacrifice. So let's go to the next slide, because that's how I want to try and help us understand the old wine, new wine thing. See, the old wine, the word that's used for sacrifice, the Hebrew word is the word zabak. I don't know if I've got my pronunciation. My Hebrew isn't all that good. Zabak, Z-A-B-A-C-H. And literally, zabak means slaughter. Literally. I just want you to sit with that for a moment. Because if your theology requires the slaughter of somebody for God to be happy, you might want to read that line. Because God doesn't desire slaughter for things to be okay. It's clear out of the mouth of Jesus. metaphorically, what it means, perhaps, is God does not desire the mindless, heartless, spiritless, convenient rather than costliness obedience. Just doing it because that's the role man. Right? So Jesus is saying here that if you've just got yourself into this kind of, the wheels are in motion way of faith, then you're probably missing the mark. He's saying too that this is a way, like deeper into it, Jesus is saying this is a way that's controlled by authorities. And it's enacted through judgment and through fear and through shame. That's how Zabak, that's how obedience, that's how sacrifice ends up working. If I make enough sacrifices, if something costs me out of my pocket, then I've covered myself in God's eyes. If you think that just personal, if it's a blindness obedience, or if it's a limited, as I say, lack of costliness, if your faith is defined by what you have given up, if you can define who you are in faith, because I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't have sex outside of marriage, I don't gamble, I don't swear, if that's how your faith is defined, well, I think what Jesus is saying here, look, that's probably a good thing if you've got some guidelines about where your boundaries are, but it's not the best marker of where you are with God. It's not the best indication of where you're at with God. Because what Jesus talks about here is that instead of zabak, instead of sacrifice, God desires mercy. The Hebrew word in this case is the word hesed, H-E-S-E-D. And it was the Hebrew word for love in the agape, the Greek word agape. It was the equivalent of that. It comes with cost. And at its heart is this sense of covenantal loyalty. Like my spirit is joining with God's. I'm prepared to listen to that voice first in my life. That's what hesed means. Hesed then means it's got this other element which is about grace, that I'm allowing grace to fill who I am. And grace, as we've talked about in the Hebrew way of understanding it, is that I can see the difference between you and me, and that's allowed to be there. It's okay. And that's how God views us. I know some people don't understand that or don't kind of get it. People would call that the difference between God and I as a dishonouring of God, that God can't handle that. But that was not the Hebrew understanding or Jesus' understanding. Jesus' understanding was that there is a difference. There's a gap, and it's allowed to be there. I'm not meant to be God. You're not meant to be God. There's a gap, and God can cope with the difference. And the other element of hesed is compassionate action. I see you. I see where you're at. I see how life may be difficult for you. I see how you've been judged. I see how you've been shamed. I see the difficulties. And I will act accordingly. Friends, that's what mercy means. If your heart lacks mercy, then pray for it and act for it. Because that's what God desires. And for Jesus, that's the message he's drawing people back to. It comes from Hosea. They would have known that. It comes from the book of Hosea, the prophet. But for his time, it would have been a new message. Can you turn the slide, please, Kyle? The other element is the wineskins. Because it's one thing to talk about wine, but the metaphor lent into wineskins as well. And the old wineskins of Jesus' time was institutional religion, run by there's a whole system which included Pharisees and scribes and teachers of the law and chief priests and Levites and a whole range of different elements that made connection with God actually quite difficult for the people. Your intermediary wasn't prayer. Your way to hear the Spirit of God wasn't said go away and pray. What it was go to synagogue, go and find the priest, make a sacrifice. And you and I will know some of this stuff too, because some of this old wineskin stuff is element in our time too. Dogma, fear and guilt. A practice that says we see people as problems. When you present and things aren't going right in your life, you must be the fault. There must be something that you've done that's put you here. You're the problem and we'll fix you up. Far more importantly than people. You see, taking those three elements so far, you can see from the passage itself that Jesus doesn't teach this stuff, but he lives it out. This whole sense of mercy as opposed to sacrifice, this whole sense of covenantal loyalty, this whole sense of grace, of being able to live okay with the gap. This whole sense of compassionate action is what the rest of the passage is all about. When Jesus encounters Matthew, he doesn't give him a lecture on how wrong it is to be a tax collector. Jesus meets Matthew and says, "Follow me." Jesus could see in Matthew something that Matthew couldn't see in himself. That's hesed, that's mercy. When Jesus encounters the father of the young girl who's died, Jesus doesn't look in his diary and go, "You know what, I can fit that in at about 5 o'clock tomorrow afternoon." Or Jesus doesn't say, "Maybe she died because you didn't look after her properly." Or, "How could you have let it come to this far before you came and tried to find me?" Jesus doesn't meet you with a clipboard to tick off try and find all the different things that are wrong with you. Jesus' first reaction is, "I must go." Mercy. And then the woman who's in the crowd who touches his cloak. Does he see it as a problem? Does he see it that she's reached for something that she wasn't entitled to? No. Jesus' response to her is that your faith has made you well. He encourages her in the strength of who she is and her own sense of God, the one who can heal, present with her there. Take heart, your faith has made you well. So as you can see, it's one thing to talk about the differences between new wine, old wineskins. But the fact of the matter is it's not just a theoretical thing. This was actually the core of who Jesus was. This is how he treated people. This wasn't just I'm telling you what to do, go out and do it, and I'll do something different, and I'm God, I'll do what I like. Jesus actually lived this out in front of his followers. So if you really want to know what is at the heart of Jesus, this is one of those core passages. Mercy. 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 Not sacrifice. Mercy. And I'd be encouraging you, as I will be trying to do myself this week, to consider that phrase. How does my life live with more mercy in it? What does it look like to live with more mercy? To not get caught up with dogma or seeing people as problems or, I don't know, like that's the core of today's passage. The final point I want to make this morning is this one, is that the new wineskins. Because Jesus was actually calling people into a movement. And the new wineskins, this line about new wine in new wineskins, he's sharing it with John's disciples. John the Baptist's disciples have come to him with a question. They've said, why are we fasting and why are we holding to all the rules when your followers are feasting? And Jesus' response is, go away and have a think about this. Like this. Well, actually, this is in the passage ahead of it, right? This is in the Paraclete just above it. But this is the embodiment of it. Jesus is talking to them, and he's encouraging them. He says, "Look, the bridegroom's here now. We're going to party for now. There's going to be a time when there'll be grieving and mourning, when I won't be around. But this is what we're going to do." And I think there's this real sense in which the new wineskins, because then he leans into the old cloak and the you don't put old cloak on new cloak and the new wine in old wineskins. And I think what Jesus is trying to do is draw John's disciples into a new way of being. And I hear those words for you and me too. That it's one thing to have wine in a barrel stored at home, but it's another thing to be able to transport it somewhere. And I see Jesus saying to John's disciples, you are the carriers. I'm giving you the opportunity to be a new wineskin here, to be a carrier of this new message, this message that people haven't heard yet. Even though it comes from 600 years ago, 700 years ago, it's a message that's got lost in there somewhere. And gosh, hasn't that message got lost in our world? The message of mercy. So I rather suspect that Jesus would be saying the same thing to you and me today. Go and be a new wineskin. Carry this new message into the world. Go and be a new wineskin. In fact, what I wanted to finish today was to say that Jesus is saying to us, in the same way that Jesus said to Matthew, follow me. That's the message. Follow me. Be a new wineskin. Carry the new wine. There are plenty of people around us who need to hear it. This message of mercy, this message of love. And so today, friends, I'm sending you to go and be Dapto briefcases. I'm sending you today to be goon bags. I'm sending you today to be new wineskins. Carry that message. Carry that message into our world. Share it, live it, be it. Desire mercy. That's the core of it. That's the heart of it. Desire mercy.